So I have a video about knowing and not knowing, and sort of the phenomenon of how awareness is both, like only in the present moment, pure awareness, pure open awareness is both knowing and not knowing at the same time. And how this quality is the same as love itself. It's being completely present with what is, and taking it all in and accepting and receiving it, and yet it also is aware of it, it's loving it, and that sort of like emotion comes in. And so when you get an insight, or when the puzzle piece clicks, there is this amazing feeling aspect of it. And sometimes we equate the rising of the feeling with the insight itself, and we take the insight as dogma. And this is sort of like how it happens, or sort of how we think that things can make us happy. But there's this amazing element of emotion and feeling to knowing. And what we perpetually do is we feel this sort of insecurity of not knowing in our lives. And we try to cover over that, and we don't realize what the emotions are. And so sometimes we don't know how to name emotions, and we're happy to just live in this muddled state of emotions. And so it's interesting, because if you take paint colors and you put them all together, you get this muddy, neutral, sort of ugly brown color. But with light, and using this as an analogy for awareness, with light itself, all of the colors together create brilliant white light. It's like a neutral light, and yet it has within it the potential of all colors itself. And so I created this kind of emotional scale that's, it's like inspired by the Abraham Hicks emotional scale, but it takes this aspect of not knowing and puts it all with the emotions. So the highest emotions are like a mixture of emotions. It's beyond any one motion itself. It's like that white, brilliant light. It's mixed together. And when you get below the scale, and I will link this, I'll put this on my blog, like color, make it look sort of pretty, and put the link below. So you can actually see it, because explaining it in a video doesn't quite cut it. But once you get below like the neutral level, I just plain old, I don't know what's going on. When this is pure awareness itself, but when this is an emotion, when you get below that, it's as if you're taking paint, something that's absorbing the light, something that's not giving the light, and it starts to get muddled. And so what I found is, when I was experiencing the worst, I guess, forms of suffering, it felt like everything was so muddled. And that's why the emotional scale is such an amazing tool, because it gives you a point to bounce off of and see, and so that you can know where you're at. Because knowing that you feel bad, but not knowing like what it is exactly, is kind of like one of the most difficult experiences. Like if you have ever had some sort of pain, chronic pain, and not known what it was or what was going on, you wanted a diagnosis, you wanted to know what it was, and when you got it, you felt such relief that at least you knew what it was, or hopefully you did, because sometimes that not knowing is the worst part. And this is like that not knowing and not being okay with it is sort of like where all our suffering stems from. And yet on the higher scales of the emotions, it's creativity, it's imagination. The author knows that they don't know what's coming next, and they know that that is their creative license itself. And so creativity is like creating with the colors of the light, and then trying to secure things is like creating with colors that are just absorbing the light. And this is when we get into patterns like having a global pandemic and buying a lot of toilet paper because we don't know what's going on. We want to know what's going on. And so we try to secure ourselves somehow in some way. And it turns out to be some ridiculous thing that causes a shortage and causes suffering for somebody else because we can't get in creative mode. And creativity and appreciation are the same exact thing. And appreciation and that love, that light, that knowing are the exact same thing. So what we really want is spontaneity. We don't want to know what happens next. We truly don't. It's only when we get in those lower emotional things, when we're really not okay with knowing, that we think we want to know and we try to secure what we know. So this is my version of the emotional scale where I kind of put these two things together. So the lowest range is I don't know what's going on, but I know I'm the problem. Kill me it now, but I don't even know how to do that. So that's like one of the most intense forms of suffering, and you realize that there's something that you're not getting and you think that you're the problem. So the more that we like interject ourselves and an aspect of ourselves that we have to secure or that is the problem, which is funny because on the lower scales you go from trying to secure yourself and worrying about yourself to actually like getting to the point of considering destructing yourself, which kind of shows you that you're completely going in the wrong direction when you start to have a lower emotion. But many of us are not used to looking at an emotional scale or even trying to name an emotion or find out where we are. We're not used to sitting with an emotion or sitting to meditate and merging the two. That's where the magical place, the now is the only place where in actuality, your actual experience already is that you're knowing and not knowing. Awareness is both of these things, or it's not awareness. So up from that is, I don't know what's going on, but I know that I really don't like it. So this would be like anger, sadness, depression. And up from that, I don't know what's going on, but I think I should, and I even might pretend that I do. And that's where most of us spend our time. And so this is like, I think I should have a purpose for my life, or I think I should be doing something other than doing this, and we cover over this by a bunch of repetitive activities that we don't want to be doing, or we try to prove our points and have conversations with people that are not satisfying whatsoever because we're trying to prove and secure what we already know. And the stage up from that is, I don't know what's going on. And so this could just be boredom, or this could be a contentment, or just kind of or like with it could be that you're completely just aware, that you're completely in the present moment and nothing's really arising. It could be meditation. The next stage up is, I don't know what's going on, but it's kind of cool. So you're like aware of things, you're noticing things, you're starting to appreciate things, you're open to what's happening, you're open to what might be coming next. The next stage is, I don't know what's going on, but it's amazing. So kid in Disneyland, never seen anything before, just like taking it all in. And this is why vacations are amazing. And the next stage up, I don't know what's going on, but I know that it's pure wonder, love, and bliss. And of course, wonder is like that pure bright light, like shining, and where all of these combine and where all of these like color-coded emotions sort of collapse into that bright, pure light itself. So you'll notice that the scale kind of gets confusing and falls apart, where you get to like the green and the neutral and the I don't know what's going on, to the highest stage. So both of those kind of loop. So like the emotional scale invites you to pick a better feeling thought, to work your way up. You also can, like, at any point realize that none of it's actually happening, that awareness is aware of emotion. An emotion like comes before the thought, it indicates the thought. And so often we try to like cover over that part of it and try to like adhere to some sort of thing. And so this is kind of like where dogma, or where following one teaching to the point of attachment can come in, that we see that's our framework for knowing that we're doing okay, that we know like what path we're on, that we know what framework we're following, and that we know what's going on. So the same thing can happen. So it's really about like taking back your own connection, your own alignment with feeling and with the light itself, and not being what the light illuminates and what the light shines on. So of course, we take ourselves to be the knower, when actually, experientially, all we ever are is the known. We're the paint, we're not the light. So that's really the magic inside of this. And so we act as if we're like a filter, like the paint is limited, that it can only, it's essentially a filter because it's absorbing certain colors, and it's rejecting the color that you see. And so sometimes we take things, when we take what we know and we add it into that filter of what we are, things start to get muddied up. And rather than filtering light and filtering the awareness for the purpose of creation and for the purpose of knowing what we actually need to know, like I know that it's going to get dark at a certain time, and so I can start out on the trail at a certain time, and knowing these practical things that we know. This is where when we disregard the emotional guidance, where we start to like, things get caught in that filter. And so instead of like being a functional filter and being like the filter on a watering can that allows the little seedlings to not get killed by the force of the water, instead of being functional anymore, there's so much like dirt caught up in the filter that there's no flow or no allowance of that light anymore. So what going into emotions means is that you pretty much exponentially expedite any progress you're trying to make, just going along with thought and trying to know that way. Because emotion is like an in with awareness. It's where feeling kind of like goes into thought, and it's coming closer to awareness itself. And this is one of the aspects of things, is that we're always like covering over awareness, but the closer and closer you get to it, the faster and more amazing things get. At the same time, according to thought, things get crazy and you're going away from what you want, and it may take you to some pretty crazy places. And so I think that oftentimes we just think that no thought, what we actually do is we mistake that muddled emotional place and not wanting to go into the feeling, not wanting to really see the feeling for what it's about. We take that as no thought. Rather, so we settle for that and say that's no thought, or we make our idea of no thought, the thought passing itself off, the imposter passing itself off, rather than going into those emotions. And this is like something that I did for years, and when I started expressing and when I started journaling, like major progress was made. And then like there can be nothing judging a no thought state as being a no thought state, and so that kind of gives that away. So I feel like that's one of the things we often do, and then we often sort of project that we're going to have this sort of like emotional equanimity, and we settle for the appearance of that, or for thinking ourselves as someone who is that, rather than the actual amazing, blissful, white light, pure feeling of that. So don't mistake the two, and don't settle. And it's ironic because it's like seeing through feeling and going into feeling, and it's going for your absolute deepest desires and not for how you want to feel, and not settling for anything less, and yet letting go of it all at once. And it's if you think it's confusing, you're trying to know, you're in that not knowing, you're in that muddled paint state, but really it's amazing. I don't know if you can see him way off in the distance, but that's a bald eagle. Maybe I'll come a bit closer. I thought I was gonna be an artist, not use what I love as analogies to teach that there are no artists, that we're all artists, that we are creation itself. I mean, man, doesn't this explain everything? Like why trying to survive doesn't work, but getting in the creative mode is exactly how everything comes to you, because you are creation. Like survival is just one cut off aspect of spontaneous, beautiful creation. And so you're never separate from it. You're never separate from that power that created you, that created earth, that light. You're not, you're it. That's all you ever were. And when you align with it, it's like everything that we resisted and pushed against is not a problem anymore. It just flows. And it's funny because, like, we have all these stories and things. Like, I remember being so fascinated by some stupid documentary on the Illuminati or something like that. And what the heck is the Eye of Providence on our money and like all that stuff, and like the Eye of Providence and the Illuminati, enlightenment, light itself. That's the knowing. That is everyone. That is all inclusive. Everything. The magic of that. Isn't that funny? Like this stupid secret society that may or may not exist. I don't know. That's supposed to be exclusive. And it's just pointing to the fact that you're aware